A forest path fades into mist, and the air hums with a presence just beyond sight. These are the realms of the yokai, the supernatural beings of Japanese folklore, and their ancient stories hold startling truths about our own lives. By the end of our journey, you will discover timeless lessons on gratitude, discernment, and humility, all hidden within tales of trickster foxes and vengeful umbrellas. We will uncover why a snow woman shows mercy and what a clumsy raccoon dog can teach us about acceptance. These are not just ghost stories, they are profound guides for living a wiser life. What strange moment in your own life felt like it carried a hidden message? A lone samurai walking a deserted road at dusk once came upon a wounded fox. Its leg was caught in a cruel trap, and instead of passing by, the warrior knelt and carefully freed the animal. He expected nothing in return, but the world of the yokai operates on a different set of rules where every action ripples through the unseen. The very next evening, a woman of breathtaking beauty appeared at the samurai's modest home. She introduced herself as a traveler and offered to serve him, to manage his household with a grace and efficiency he had never known. This, of course, was the kitsune, the fox, its true form hidden behind a powerful illusion of gratitude. The samurai's life was not an easy one. He was a man of honor in a time of shifting alliances, and a powerful local lord had begun to see him as a threat. This lord devised a series of impossible challenges designed to publicly humiliate the samurai and force him into exile. The first demand was to produce a priceless, ancient scroll from a temple that had burned to the ground decades prior. The samurai despaired, but the mysterious woman simply smiled. That night, she vanished into the woods. By morning, the exact scroll, perfectly preserved, lay upon his table. She had used her innate magic to commune with the spirits of the air, who guided her to a hidden cache the fire never touched. The lord, enraged, then commanded the samurai to present a robe woven from the feathers of the legendary ho-oh bird, a creature of myth. Again, the samurai saw only failure, and again his devoted servant assured him all would be well. She transformed back into her fox form and ran for 3 days and 3 nights to a sacred mountain peak. There she did not fight the celestial bird, but instead bowed and humbly told the story of the samurai's kindness. Moved by this tale of a good deed repaid, the ho-oh bird plucked a single, radiant feather from its breast. As the kitsune carried it home, the feather multiplied in her grasp until it became a full robe shimmering with otherworldly light. The core wisdom here is as practical as it is profound. The samurai's initial act was a small kindness offered without any thought of reward. He helped a creature that many would have considered beneath their notice or even an omen of bad luck. Yet this single decision to act with compassion summoned a powerful, loyal ally into his life. The story teaches that genuine gratitude is not a passive feeling but an active force. The kitsune could have simply healed and returned to the forest, its debt unpaid. Instead, it chose to weave its magic into the fabric of the samurai's destiny, turning his greatest crises into his most glorious triumphs. This is the unexpected reward for kindness, a lesson that echoes far beyond the folktale. But the kitsune itself is a being of beautiful contradiction. Its legendary intelligence is a double-edged sword, capable of elaborate pranks and mischievous deceptions. Yet in this tale, that very same cunning is channeled into unwavering protection. The fox does not use its powers for selfish gain, but for selfless repayment. This reflects a deep truth about intelligence and power themselves. They are neutral tools. Their moral weight comes entirely from the heart of the one who wields them. The kitsune's magic could have built a palace of illusions to confuse the samurai, but instead it built a fortress of loyalty around him. So the next time you encounter a strange situation or an unexpected being, whether in a story or in your own life, what hidden potential for gratitude might you be overlooking? Yet the world of the yokai is not solely the domain of elegant foxes and samurai honor. Sometimes wisdom arrives not with graceful cunning, but with a clumsy, bouncing thud. In a small, quiet village, a poor man once found an old copper tea kettle among his belongings. It was tarnished and seemingly useless, so he decided to sell it to a nearby temple for a few coins. The priests, thinking it a simple household item, bought it and placed it over the fire to boil water. But as the kettle began to heat up, something miraculous and utterly bizarre happened. 4 furry legs sprouted from its base, a round, furry head popped up from the lid, and a bushy tail unfurled from its handle. The kettle had transformed into a tanuki, the jovial raccoon dog of Japanese folklore, and it promptly leaped from the fire and began bouncing around the temple floor with a cheerful, chaotic energy. At first, the priests were horrified. This sacred space was being turned into a playground by a possessed piece of cookware. The tanuki kettle would roll and somersault, clanging noisily during meditation and disrupting solemn ceremonies. It was a genuine nuisance, a creature of pure, unrefined chaos. But the priests, instead of driving it out or destroying it, chose a different path. They observed its harmless, joyful nature. They saw that its antics, while clumsy, held a certain infectious charm. They decided to accept it not as a mistake or a monster, but as a unique resident of their temple. This acceptance unlocked the kettle's true magic. The head priest, with a spark of insight, saw an opportunity. He began to take the transformed tanuki on tours, presenting it to the public as a wondrous spectacle. Villagers from miles around would come and pay a small fee to see the miraculous bouncing tea kettle. The temple, once struggling, found itself flooded with donations and prosperity, all thanks to this imperfect, unexpected guest. The clumsy tanuki became their greatest treasure. The wisdom here is disarmingly simple, yet we so often forget it. The initial reaction of the priests was to see the tanuki as a problem, something that did not fit their idea of a proper temple object. Its value was completely hidden beneath a surface of apparent uselessness and disruption. But by looking past its clumsy exterior and accepting its inherent nature, they discovered a unique form of magic that brought them not just wealth but joy. This tale is a powerful lesson in not judging by first impressions. How many times have we dismissed a person, an idea, or an opportunity because it seemed awkward, unpolished, or simply too strange? The tanuki teaches us that what appears to be a flaw can often be the very source of its greatest gift. Its bumbling generosity wasn't planned or elegant. It was an authentic expression of its being, and that authenticity became the key to prosperity for everyone involved. It asks us to consider what wonderful, chaotic magic we might be overlooking in our own lives, simply because it arrived in an unexpected package. But the tanuki kettle was not the only object with a hidden soul. There is a deeper, more ancient belief that anything used and cherished for 100 years can awaken into a life of its own. These are the Tsukumogami, the tool spirits, and their stories carry a chilling warning wrapped in a simple truth. In a wealthy merchant's home, a beautiful paper lantern had illuminated the family's evenings for generations. It was a masterpiece of craftsmanship, its frame of aged bamboo and its parchment painted with delicate cranes. But as the family's fortunes grew, their tastes changed. They acquired new, fashionable oil lamps from the West, and the old lantern was deemed obsolete. It was carelessly tossed into a dusty storage shed, forgotten and left to decay. On the night of its 100th birthday, as the moon reached its zenith, a new light kindled within the shed. The lantern did not just light up, it awoke. It grew a single, mournful eye on its paper shade, and a long, thin tongue of faded paper licked out from beneath its frame. It remembered every gentle hand that had once polished it, every joyful festival it had illuminated, and it remembered the callous disrespect of its abandonment. This was no longer a mere object, it was a spirit scorned. The lantern began to haunt the household, It would appear in the dead of night, floating silently outside the merchant's bedroom, its single, accusing eye staring inward. It would drift through the halls, its faint, eerie glow casting long, dancing shadows that terrified the family. It never harmed them physically, but its presence was a constant, unnerving reminder of their ingratitude. The pranks were a manifestation of its grief and anger, a demand to be seen and respected once more. The wisdom here is profoundly ecological and spiritual. The lantern was not merely a possession, it was a vessel of history and resources. The bamboo was once a living plant in a forest. The paper came from the careful labor of mulberry bark harvesters. The craftsmanship represented the skill and time of an artisan. To discard it carelessly was to disrespect an entire chain of life and labor. The Tsukumogami tale personifies this principle, making the consequence of wastefulness tangible and unnerving. It teaches a mindful relationship with the things we own, suggesting that everything from a simple teacup to a cherished book has a life of its own that deserves consideration. This is not just about avoiding ghostly pranks, it is about cultivating a life of gratitude and responsibility for the resources that sustain us. How different would our world look if we saw the spirit in the objects we use every day? Deep within the mountain blizzards, another yokai waits, a being of breathtaking beauty and absolute cold. She is the Yuki Anna, the snow woman, and her story holds one of the most poignant lessons on the weight of a promise. On a night when the wind screamed like a dying animal, two woodcutters were caught in a sudden, violent storm. One was an old man, hardened by decades of labor, the other his young apprentice, barely more than a boy. They took refuge in a small, drafty hut, but the cold was a living force seeping through the walls. The old man succumbed to the chill, falling into a sleep from which he would never wake. The young woodcutter, trembling and near death, saw the door open without a sound. A woman stood there, her skin as pale as fresh snow, her hair as black as a starless night, and her kimono a pure, unblemished white. She floated towards him, her breath a visible mist that froze the air. He was paralyzed, certain his end had come. She leaned in, her lips nearly touching his cheek, and instead of stealing his last warmth, she whispered a single, icy command. "You will speak of me to no one, not even your own mother. If you do, I will know, and I will return for you." Then she vanished into the swirling snow, leaving him alive and utterly alone. He survived the night, and the memory of her became a secret frost lodged in his heart. Years passed. The young woodcutter built a life, marrying a woman of remarkable grace and quiet composure who had arrived in the village from no one knew where. She was a dutiful wife, and they were happy, raising children in a warm home. Yet the secret of that stormy night festered inside him. One evening, as he sat with his wife by the fire, watching the snow fall outside, the memory overwhelmed him. The weight of the untold story became too heavy to bear. He broke his vow, confessing everything to the one person he thought he could trust most in the world. He told her of the beautiful, terrifying spirit of her icy mercy and of the promise he had just shattered. As he finished his tale, a familiar chill filled the room. The fire in the hearth guttered and died. His wife stood, her gentle features hardening into an expression of ancient, sorrowful power. "I told you never to speak of me," she said, her voice the sound of cracking ice. "I am that snow woman. I spared you once, and I lived beside you all these years to see if my mercy was misplaced." The woodcutter fell to his knees, begging for his life for the sake of their children. The Yuki Anna stood over him, a being of absolute winter who could extinguish his warmth with a touch. Her internal conflict was a silent storm. She had every right to exact a price, to enforce the law of the wild she represented. Yet she hesitated. She saw the life they had built together, the love that had grown in the hearth of their home. In that moment, the spirit of the unforgiving blizzard showed him a second, even greater mercy. "For the sake of the family they had created, I will spare you again," she whispered. "But if you ever neglect our children, if you ever prove yourself unworthy of this gift, I will return." And then she was gone, leaving only the cold and a profoundly changed man. This tale cuts to the very core of human frailty and spiritual strength. The Yuki-onna embodies the dual nature of the world itself, beautiful and nurturing one moment, harsh and lethal the next. Her initial mercy was a capricious gift, but her final act was a conscious choice. It was a wisdom that recognized the sanctity of a promise, but also the greater value of a life lived in love. She demonstrated that even the most rigid rules can be tempered by compassion, that a second chance can be the most powerful lesson of all. It asks us to consider the promises we keep and the unexpected forms that forgiveness can sometimes take. Even a creature of the murky river depths is bound by the rules of etiquette. The kappa, a mischievous and often dangerous water imp, looks like a reptilian child with a turtle shell and a beak-like mouth. Its most peculiar feature is a dish-like depression on top of its head, which holds a pool of water. This water is the source of its life force and its power on land. A person walking alone by a riverbank might find themselves confronted by this being, known for dragging the unwary to a watery demise. Yet, survival does not always require strength, but rather a keen understanding of an opponent's nature. The clever traveler, remembering the old tales, would bow deeply to the kappa. The creature's compulsion to return the bow is an ingrained, unstoppable reflex. As it bends forward, the life-giving water spills from the dish on its head, and the mighty kappa is instantly rendered weak and helpless, stranded on dry land. In this moment of vulnerability, a strange negotiation begins. The human holds the power of life and death over the weakened yokai, but the wise person does not destroy the kappa. Instead, they offer a bargain. The creature, desperate to return to its watery home, will often beg for its life, promising a great reward. Its favorite food, the cucumber, becomes a powerful token in this exchange. The human might promise a steady supply of cucumbers left at the riverbank each full moon in return for the kappa's vow of peace. Or, more profoundly, the kappa might offer something far more valuable, a secret. These water imps are renowned for their knowledge of bone setting and medicinal herbs. In exchange for its freedom, a kappa might teach the human a powerful medical technique, a way to heal wounds or set broken bones that would be unknown to any village doctor. This knowledge, born from a desperate deal, would then be passed down through generations, a literal life-saving gift from a would-be killer. The wisdom here is beautifully layered. On one hand, the story celebrates the power of politeness and ritual. The simple, formal act of a bow is not just empty manners, it is a key that disarms a monster. It shows that understanding and respecting the customs of another, even an adversary, can be a source of immense strength. Yet, this is not a lesson in blind obedience. The human uses this ritual cleverly as a strategic tool to expose a fatal weakness. This is the essence of true discernment, knowing the rules well enough to use them to your advantage when necessary. The kappa, for all its fearsome power, is ultimately trapped by its own compulsive nature. The tale reminds us that every formidable force, every challenge we face, has its vulnerable point. The key to navigating a dangerous situation is not always confrontation, but observation, cleverness, and a willingness to engage in a strategic exchange. The final piece of wisdom lies in the bargain itself. By choosing negotiation over destruction, the human transforms a terrifying encounter into a source of lasting benefit. The kappa gets its cucumbers and its life, and the village gains a priceless medical secret. It is a lesson in the power of resolution over annihilation, suggesting that even our greatest adversaries can sometimes become our most unexpected teachers. Boundaries can dissolve as quietly as a shadow lengthening across the floor. In the world of yokai, few beings embody this unsettling truth more than the Nyorarihin, the mysterious supreme commander of all supernatural beings. He is often depicted as a stooped old man with a head shaped like an elongated gourd, clad in fine silk robes and moving with an air of unshakable entitlement. His power is not one of roaring storms or fearsome claws, but of silent, unnerving presence. Imagine a prosperous household one evening, the family gathered after their meal. The door was latched, the night was calm. Yet, when the master of the house enters his own sitting room, he finds a strange old man already there, seated upon the best cushion as if it were his throne. The Nyorahin does not break in, he simply manifests his arrival as seamless as a thought. He sips an imaginary cup of tea, and his calm, expectant gaze falls upon the stunned family. A profound and immediate social paralysis takes hold. The family, though confused and frightened, finds themselves bowing. The wife scurries to prepare the finest tea. The husband offers the most expensive sweets from their storage. They serve this uninvited guest not out of hospitality, but from a deep, instinctual compulsion. They feel in their very bones that this is what they must do. The Nyorahin accepts their offerings with a silent nod, his passive authority filling the room like a heavy perfume. He stays for an hour or perhaps the entire night, partaking of their generosity without a word of thanks. And when he is satisfied, he simply stands and drifts out the door as quietly as he arrived, leaving the family in a state of bewildered exhaustion, their pantry a little emptier and their sense of security deeply shaken. The wisdom here is not about ghosts, but about the invisible architecture of our own lives. The Nyorahin is a master of exploiting social obligation, that unspoken pressure to be polite, to avoid confrontation, to serve a guest no matter how strangely they arrive. He weaponizes good manners. His power exists in the vacuum of assertiveness, thriving only when people are unwilling to challenge his silent claim to their space. This tale holds up a mirror to the metaphorical uninvited guests we all encounter. These are the thoughts that overstay their welcome, the draining obligations we feel we cannot refuse, the people in our lives who assume our time and energy as their right. The Nyorahin is the embodiment of that creeping feeling that you are serving someone else's needs in your own home, whether that home is a physical place or the private landscape of your mind. The story's lesson is a call to conscious guardianship. It teaches that our personal space, our time, and our peace are sacred, and that we must sometimes find the courage to politely but firmly ask the uninvited to leave. It is not about being rude, but about recognizing that passive authority only has power when we willingly surrender our own. What silent Nyorahin have you been serving tea to in your own life? Even the most alluring sanctuary can be a carefully constructed trap. Deep within a forgotten mountain valley, a dilapidated manor house stood, its gardens overgrown yet strangely beautiful. Here lived a woman of unparalleled grace, a solitary figure who played a melancholic tune on her biwa each evening. To the weary traveler or the lonely samurai, she was a vision of salvation, offering warm shelter, captivating conversation, and the intoxicating promise of affection. Her eyes held a deep, sorrowful wisdom that seemed to understand a man's every hidden pain. This was the Joragumo, the spider yokai, and her entire existence was an exquisite web of deception. She would weave a cocoon of comfort around her chosen victim, listening with feigned empathy and offering flattering words that fed his deepest insecurities and desires. The relationship would intensify quickly, a whirlwind of false intimacy designed to lower all defenses. Just when the man felt most secure, most loved, the illusion would shatter. The beautiful woman's form would blur and contort, her limbs elongating into jointed, hairy appendages. Her lovely face would split open to reveal multifaceted eyes and venom-dripping fangs. The gentle hands that once poured tea now spun unbreakable silk strands, binding the trapped man as she revealed her true, monstrous nature. This was not a quick end, but a slow, deliberate consumption. The wisdom here is brutally clear and painfully relevant. The Joragumo preys on a very specific vulnerability, the deep human need for connection and understanding. She does not attack with brute force, but with a perfect mimicry of love, targeting those who are isolated and yearning. Her story is a timeless cautionary tale about the dangers of superficial attraction, warning us that the most beautiful facade can conceal a soul-devouring void. It is a powerful metaphor for the toxic relationships in our own world, the ones that feel incredibly right at first, that love bomb you with attention and flattery, only to slowly reveal a controlling, manipulative, and ultimately destructive core. The Jorogumo's victim is complicit in his own capture, not through fault but through a lack of discernment. He sees only the beauty and the immediate fulfillment of his needs, failing to look for the subtle inconsistencies, the small signs that something is not quite right. The silken threads that bind him are not just physical, they are the emotional strings of dependency and flattery she so expertly pulled. This tale urges a deeper kind of sight. It asks us to move beyond the surface charm and to truly observe a person's actions over their words. Does their affection feel conditional? Does the relationship move at an unnaturally fast pace? Are you isolated from others in your life? These are the subtle vibrations on the web, the early warnings of a predator's presence. The lesson is not to become cynical, but to cultivate the wisdom of self-preservation, to understand that true connection is built on authenticity and time, not on the intoxicating but hollow promise of a perfect fantasy. How do we learn to distinguish the gentle hand from the one that secretly spins a thread? A bridge at midnight is a lonely place, but the woman standing there seems to carry all the loneliness in the world. She is the Yubium, and in her arms she cradles a bundle, a tiny infant she hums to softly. When a compassionate traveler approaches, her eyes, full of a bottomless grief, plead with him. "Please, just for a moment, could you hold my child?" Her desperation is so raw, so human, that it disarms all fear. The traveler gently takes the bundle, feeling the surprising weight of the baby, and in that moment of transferred trust, the woman's form begins to fade like mist. He looks down at the child in his arms, only to watch it dissolve into a small pile of wet leaves or a smooth, cold stone. This was not a trick meant to harm, but a spirit trapped by the most powerful of human bonds. The Yubium is the ghost of a woman who died in childbirth. Her love for the child she never got to hold so immense that it anchored her soul to this world. Her repeated, sorrowful request is not a malicious prank, but a desperate attempt to complete the act of motherhood she was denied, to have her baby held safely just once. In historical Japan, where childbirth was a dangerous passage that claimed countless lives, her story was a hauntingly common specter, a silent commentary on a very real and ever-present societal fear. The wisdom here is not about avoiding ghosts, but about recognizing profound, unresolved suffering. The traveler's simple act of holding the bundle, of accepting a strange request with kindness, performs a quiet miracle. It gives the spirit the peace she sought. In some tales, the next morning, the traveler finds a rare silver coin left on the bridge as a thank you. In others, he simply feels a sudden warmth in the air, a sense of a burden finally lifted. His small act of trust did not fight a monster, it healed a broken heart. This tale speaks to the enduring, terrifying power of a mother's love, a force so strong it can defy the very boundaries of life and death. But it also carries a deeper societal wisdom, reminding us of the fragile threads that once connected life and loss, and the invisible griefs that history often forgets. The Yubium's sorrow asks for our compassion, not our fear. She teaches us that the most powerful magic we can wield is often a simple, human kindness offered to a troubled soul, a willingness to briefly share a burden too heavy for one spirit to carry alone. What unseen griefs around us are quietly asking for nothing more than a moment of our understanding. A proud samurai once believed his skill with a blade was unmatched. He climbed a sacred mountain, seeking the legendary Tengu warriors to test his might against a worthy opponent. Deep in the misty cedar forest, he found one, a towering figure with a fierce, crimson face and a long nose, its wings folded like a cloak of shadows. The samurai issued a challenge, his voice ringing with arrogance. The Tengu accepted with a silent nod, arming itself only with a wooden staff. The fight was not a contest, it was a dismantling. The samurai's polished, elegant techniques were useless. Every strike was effortlessly deflected, every lunge met with empty air. The Tengu moved with the unpredictable flow of the mountain wind, using the samurai's own force and pride to send him tumbling into the dirt, his fine sword clattering away into the undergrowth. Lying there, humiliated and breathless, the samurai expected a final, mocking blow. Instead, the Tengu extended a hand. It saw not a defeated fool, but a vessel that was finally empty enough to be filled. This was the beginning of the true path to mastery. The Tengu became his mentor, but the lessons were not what the samurai expected. He was not taught more complex sword forms. Instead, he was made to sit for hours in silent meditation, learning to listen to the whispers of the forest, to feel the shift in the air that signaled a change in the weather. He was taught to move through the dense undergrowth without snapping a single twig, his steps becoming as silent as falling snow. The Tengu's wisdom was that true power does not come from dominating nature, but from harmonizing with it. A warrior who fights against the wind will tire, but a warrior who understands the wind can use its currents to guide his arrow. The samurai's ego, once his driving force, was systematically stripped away. He learned that his pride was a cage, limiting his perception and making him predictable. The Tengu valued a mind as clear and reflective as a mountain lake, not a heart clouded by the need for glory. This harsh but fair teacher embodied the principle that the greatest obstacle to learning is the belief that you already know. Humility is not weakness, it is the essential starting point for all genuine growth. It is the open hand ready to receive while the closed fist of arrogance can hold nothing. The Tengu's path asks a difficult question of anyone who seeks to master a craft, an art, or even their own life. Are you willing to be a student again, to let go of everything you think you are in order to become what you might be? A child's laughter echoes from a spotless, sunlit room where no child lives. This is the music of the Zashiki Warashi, a spirit of fortune who appears as a young boy or girl with a beautifully old-fashioned haircut and a mischievous glint in their eye. They are not ghosts of the dead, but capricious beings drawn to peaceful, well-kept homes. Their presence is felt, not always seen. A cushion mysteriously indented in an empty room, a small object moved from its usual place, the faint sound of playful footsteps in the hallway. These are not acts of malice, but the spirit's way of announcing its residence, a playful testing of the household's atmosphere. The wisdom here is as practical as sweeping your own front step. The Zashiki Warashi does not bestow its gifts arbitrarily. Its continued presence and the prosperity it brings is entirely conditional. It will only stay in a home where the family is genuinely kind to one another, where respect is the unspoken rule, and where the physical space is maintained with care and pride. A harmonious family life is its favorite nourishment, and a clean, orderly home is its chosen playground. The moment that harmony shatters, the moment neglect and discord seep into the walls, the spirit will depart as quietly as it arrived, taking all its good fortune with it. This tale beautifully personifies a profound truth about abundance. Luck is not a random lightning strike, but often the natural consequence of a virtuous environment. The Zashiki Warashi is a mirror reflecting the spiritual and physical state of the household back at itself. Its playful antics are a daily reminder that prosperity is a living thing, something that must be invited and nurtured through our own actions. It asks us to consider the energy we cultivate within our own walls. Is it one of gratitude and order that would attract such a benevolent being, or one of chaos and strife that would inevitably drive it away? The spirit's loyalty is not to the building, but to the quality of life lived within it, teaching us that the foundation of any lasting good fortune is built brick by brick with kindness, respect, and a mindful attention to the space we call home. From the Kitsune's unwavering loyalty to the Yuki Honor's chilling mercy, these tales are more than ghost stories. They are profound maps of the human heart. Each yokai, in its own strange way, holds up a mirror to our own virtues and vices. The samurai learned that a single act of kindness can summon a lifetime of protection, a lesson in the active power of gratitude. The Tanuki kettle revealed that what we first dismiss as clumsy or useless often holds our greatest potential for joy and prosperity. The scorned Tsukumogami taught us to live with mindful respect for the objects and resources that sustain our lives, seeing the spirit within the material world. The Kappa demonstrated that true strength lies not in brute force, but in clever discernment and the wisdom to transform a foe into a teacher. The Nyororihin exposed the danger of passive compliance, urging us to guard our personal boundaries against those who would claim our time and energy as their right. The Joragumo warned of the silken traps of superficial charm, reminding us that true connection requires the discernment to see beyond a beautiful facade. The Yubyum's endless sorrow called for our deepest compassion, showing that the simplest act of kindness can heal a wound that transcends life itself. And the Tengu, with its harsh staff, carved away the folly of pride, teaching that the path to true mastery begins with the humility of an empty cup. These ancient stories use the supernatural to explore the most human of struggles, and their wisdom is as vital today as it was centuries ago. They remind us that the world is alive with unseen lessons, waiting in the quiet moments, the strange encounters, and the choices we make every day. The real magic is not in believing in yokai, but in recognizing the timeless truths they represent, truths that can guide us toward a wiser, more compassionate way of living. What piece of wisdom from these tales resonated most deeply with you, or what folk tale from your own culture carries a similar power? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this journey, subscribe for more explorations into the myths and lore that shape our world.